at the beginning of the pulmonary trunk. Semilunar, three cusps, half moon shape, isn't it? Are there. Same like in the beginning of the aorta. It is same like this. Okay. So these are one more set of valves, that is semilunar valves. Okay, at the beginning of the aorta and at the beginning of the pulmonary trunk. Okay, this is about the valves of the heart.
So, doctor, you have two AV valves and two semilunar.
Yes, two AV valves, that is left and right. Right one is tricuspid. So it is having three cusps. See here, between this is a right atrium, right ventricle. So between these two, there is a cusps. Three cusps are there. Okay. So that is why it is called tricuspid. Okay. Similarly, in this model, isn't it? Three cusps. See here, this is a right atrium, isn't it? Right ventricle. So in between these two chambers, there is a valve, isn't it? Which is having three cusps. 1, 2 and 3 cusps, isn't it?
What are they?
Okay. Huh?
What are they?
White one.
Okay.
Cusps. Okay, 3 cusps. So these thread-like structures, what you are seeing, chorda tendinae, thread. So which connects the cusps and the papillary muscle, between the papillary muscle and the cusps. So these thread-like structures, these are called the chorda tendinae. Okay. Chorda tendinae. And these chorda tendinae attached to the papillary muscle. See here, one elevation, papillary muscle. Okay, so this is a papillary muscle. Papillary muscle, slight elevation. Okay, inside the ventricle, papillary muscle. So in the right ventricle, about the interior of the right ventricle, there are 3 papillary muscle. 3 cusps are there, isn't it? So 1 cusp for 1 papillary muscle. So anterior papillary muscle, inferior papillary muscle here, and the septal papillary muscle.
Can I see this one?
Yes. Anterior, isn't it? So it's supposed to be attached here. So here it is the chorda tendinae, okay, and papillary muscle, anterior, okay, and inferior, and towards the septum, septal papillary muscle here, okay. So these all 3 cusps connected with the papillary muscle, 3 papillary muscle through the chorda tendinae, okay. So that while the ventricular contraction, there is a backflow of the blood, isn't it? So that the chorda tendinae holds in the position of the cusps, isn't it? They will hold. So if there is a back pressure like this during ventricular contraction, cusp goes like this, isn't it? So by the chorda tendinae, these valves is stable. Okay. There is not a prolapse of these valves into the right atrium. So these valves provides a unidirectional flow of the blood, isn't it? Only one direction blood flows. Okay, only from the right atrium to the right ventricle, not from right ventricle to the right atrium. So these provides the unidirectional blood flow. All the valves I am telling. semilunar and both AV valves.
Doctor, these tendons, when they relax, the valves opens to the through the atriums, right?
Yes. So here is the superior vena cava, okay, and the inferior vena cava. Here is a right atrium, isn't it? So especially about the interior of the heart, right atrium, it is very important because so many structures are opens into this, isn't it? Similarly, the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, okay, and here the coronary sinus inside. Coronary sinus. Red mark is there, no? Coronary sinus. Here, inside, coronary sinus. Yes. Red mark is there, no? Inside. So, coronary sinus, what it is?
Joining between sulcus, coronary
Coronary sinus.
sinus, between sulci.
Between right atrium and right ventricle.
Yes, that is there. What is this actually?
So
Sinus.
sinus.
Coronary sinus. What is coronary arteries? What are these coronary arteries? So it is a muscular pump, isn't it? It also needs a nutrition, oxygenated blood itself, isn't it? So blood itself, it requires a circulation, isn't it? So through the coronary artery, which supplies the oxygenated blood, isn't it? Right and left coronary artery. Okay. So after the utilizing the nutrition and the oxygen, again it is having deoxygenated blood. Through that, the veins of this heart, okay, all to collect and opens here. That is nothing but the coronary sinus. It is also deoxygenated blood, isn't it? So coronary sinus this is. Okay. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, coronary sinus, and this is a fossa ovalis, dark colored inside. Fossa ovalis. So it is just like a partition between the right atrium and the left atrium. So in the fetal circulation, what happens? It is open actually in the fetal circulation. So blood has to enter into the right atrium, then left atrium. It is like that in fetal circulation. So after the birth, it will close. Okay, it will close. So this part, it is very thin. It is a partition between the left and right atrium. So here is a
Which one, doctor? That is
fossa ovalis.
Yeah.
Fossa ovalis,
Yeah.
coronary sinus, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, isn't it? These are the openings. Apart from this, the Tabacian veins also opens here in the all the chambers, minor veins. Okay, Tabacian veins. Okay, so here you can't see in this model. Okay, usually they are present here. Okay, in the upper part. Okay, Tabacian veins. So this is about the right atrium and the right ventricle. Okay, so in the right ventricle there are three papillary muscle: anterior, inferior, and the septal papillary muscle, isn't it? And similarly, these chorda tendineae attached to individual muscle. Individual cusp is attached to individual this papillary muscle. Okay, anterior, inferior, and the septal papillary muscle. Is it clear? Okay.
Anterior, inferior.
Septal. Next is here in this model. So it is very clear, isn't it? Right atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle, and the left atrium. isn't it? Left atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle, right atrium, isn't it? So here one groove is there, isn't it? So this is, it is like this anatomically. So it is atrioventricular groove, okay, or coronary sulcus here. Partition.
Between right and right?
Yes, coronary sulcus or atrioventricular groove. So here one artery is there, that is the right coronary artery.
What is it?
Here. This is the artery, right coronary artery.
Okay.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Atrioventricular groove here. So this is a right coronary artery. Here interatrial groove here. Interatrial between the interventricular. Okay, between the ventricles.
Anterior or posterior, this one?
Here.
Anterior, right?
Anterior. Anterior interventricular groove here. So here it is the left coronary artery. Left coronary artery and the right coronary artery.
What is the right and what is the left?
Left is here. Okay. Inside. Left. So it divides into circumflex artery and it continues as a anterior interventricular artery, isn't it? Circumflex. So this is a left coronary artery, right coronary artery. Again, it will we will teach in coronary circulation. Just to know the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery and origin point. Origin point of the right and left coronary artery. I will tell you later. Okay. And here it is the base. Base is formed by left atrium, mainly left atrium, part of right atrium, isn't it? So there are sinuses in between. Before this, before the sinuses, we will discuss about the pericardium. What is this pericardium?
Covering.
It is a outer covering of the heart, isn't it? So it is having two layers, that is fibrous pericardium and the serous pericardium, isn't it? Very good. So here it is the fibrous pericardium. Okay. It's supposed to be like this. Okay. Covering. Outer one. Where these are attached? Attached to the great vessels. That is the pulmonary trunk
Adventitia of
and
Goethe.
here aorta. Okay, these are attached. And the fibrous pericardium, it is tough. Okay, it is a tough coverage. And the serous pericardium, it is having two layers, that is serous pericardium and the parietal
Parietal and
pericardium.
visceral.
Very good. So inner surface of the fibrous pericardium, it attaches, that is the parietal layer of
Parietal.
serous pericardium. Okay. And at the visceral layer of the serous pericardium attached close to the heart. Okay. And in between these two there is a gap, isn't it?
Yes.
Pericardial
Pericardial cave.
space, which is filled with pericardial fluid, isn't it? And what are the function of this pericardium?
Situation.
Protection.
Oxygenation.
It holds in the position, isn't it?
Limitation of the movement.
Yes, it provides a
Limits the movement of. Prevent.
it provides the free movement for the contraction of the heart, isn't it?
Yes.
It provides the free space here, isn't it? And also it avoids over bulging of the heart, over expansion of the heart, isn't it? It holds, isn't it? So this is about the pericardium. Okay. Pericardium is over and the chambers of heart. So, in the chambers of heart, right atrium and the right ventricle over, isn't it? And in the left ventricle and the left atrium.
So could you explain the large one?
Here. So this is a right ventricle, isn't it? Just observe how are the walls of the ventricle. Here, otherwise.
More muscular.
Yes, left one is more muscular compared to right ventricle. Wall of the right ventricle and the left ventricle. If you compare, there is a more thickness in the left ventricle, isn't it, than the right one? Because why? Why it is so?
Direction. The blood transfer.
Yes,
Responsible for pumping blood to the systemic circulation.
the wall of the left ventricle, it is thicker, isn't it? Thicker than the right one.
For pumping.
Yeah, for pumping. So, what is the function of right ventricle? It has to pump the blood till the lung, isn't it? So, after receiving the blood from the right atrium to the right ventricle, it has to pump, isn't it? So, after pumping, what happens? Through the pulmonary trunk, it divides into right and left pulmonary artery, isn't it? So, this goes to right and left lungs, isn't it? So, after the oxygenation, again, these oxygenated blood come back to the left atrium, isn't it? So, it is a short duration, isn't it? No need to do the more pressure, isn't it? That is why this wall is thin. So, whereas left ventricle, it has to pump the blood throughout the body. It needs more pressure, isn't it, to contract, isn't it? That is why this wall is thick. Okay. So, after receiving the oxygenated blood into the left atrium, okay, so blood travels through the AV valve, left AV valve, that is mitral valve or bicuspid valve. Okay, and here you can see the bicuspid valve. Two cusps it is having, isn't it? Anterior and posterior cusp. Okay, and this is a papillary muscle. Anterior papillary muscle, and behind this there is a posterior papillary muscle. Okay, and chorda tendinae. Chorda tendinae attached to the papillary and the cusp. Okay. And after receiving oxygenated blood from the left atrium to the left ventricle, it has to pump, isn't it? So, the oxygenated blood enters into the aorta here. Okay. So, how the valves? These are semilunar valves, same like the pulmonary trunk. Okay. So, about the origin of the right coronary artery, I told, isn't it? Where they originate. So, it is having three cusps, isn't it? Aorta, anterior cusp, and two posterior, that is left posterior and the right posterior cusp, like this, isn't it? So, think it is a anterior cusp and the left posterior cusp. So, at this point there is a origin of the right coronary artery. From the left posterior cusp, from here the left coronary artery originates, isn't it? Is it clear now? So, it is having three cusps here, isn't it?
Aortic valve.
Inside. Yeah, valve. Cusp like this, isn't it? Cup like the structure. Three are there, isn't it? Inside, beginning of the aorta, ascending aorta, here inside. Three cusps it is having, isn't it? So, one is anterior, okay, another two left posterior and the right posterior. Okay, so here like this cusps, isn't it? What you are seeing in this picture. So here at this cusp like structure is there, no? Cup like. Okay, so here at the anterior sinus, so this is nothing but the sinus. Okay, in the anterior aortic sinus, the right coronary artery originates. Okay, same thing at the left posterior sinus. Okay, cup like or the space. Here the left coronary artery originates. Is it clear now? Okay.
So this, doctor, this sinus follows the valve
Yes,
in
yes,
the
yes.
aorta.
Yeah, sinus means like this. There are three. Here semilunar valves, or else semilunar valve, semilunar valve. So anterior, left and right, posterior. There are three semilunar valves are there, isn't it? So in the anterior sinus, so this cup-like structure is there, no? Inside that anterior sinus. So this is a anterior semilunar cusp. Think it is okay. So here it is the sinus, anterior sinus. Okay. So from this point there is a origin of the right coronary artery.
Anterior sinus.
Yes. See here. Here is the right coronary artery. Originate from the anterior aortic sinus. Isn't it? And similarly, the left coronary artery. Here is a right coronary artery. Okay. It originates from the anterior aortic sinus, isn't it? Similarly, the left coronary artery here originates from the left posterior aortic sinus. Okay, is it clear? Just keep in mind where it originates because it is important. Yes. Is it clear now?
Yes.
About the heart? Interior of the left ventricle, interior of the right ventricle, interior of the right atrium. So interior of the right atrium is important. Okay. And also all the things are important, but usually the question may arise from this. Usually. Huh? And about right ventricle, interior especially, how many papillary muscles are there? Three, isn't it? Anterior, inferior and the septal papillary muscles. From these papillary muscles, the cauda tendinae attaches, isn't it? And then, so cauda tendinae, these are thread-like structures between the these cusps and the papillary muscle. Okay, cusps and the papillary muscle, thread-like structure, cauda tendinae. Okay, and in case of left ventricle, there are two papillary muscle. Okay, anterior and the posterior, because it is having two cusps, isn't it? That is why it is having two papillary muscle.
Doctor, the papillary muscle can be identified in this model?
Yes.
Can be seen in this model exactly?
Yes.
Or just the anterior?
So here is it is anterior. Okay. And inside it is posterior, inside one papillary muscle. See here, isn't it? Posterior and the anterior papillary muscle. Okay. And what is this? This is a auricle, left auricle and the right auricle. Extension part from the atrium, left and right atrium, isn't it? Okay. Section I want to show you. Just a minute.